I used to think the night shift at a gas station was the safest job you could have. Nothing really happens after midnight, except the occasional tired truck driver or someone grabbing cigarettes. Most nights were just long stretches of silence, broken by the hum of the refrigerators and the buzz of the fluorescent lights. But one night, a man walked into the store, and by the time he left, I realized I had just been used as part of something I didn't understand. And the worst part is, I still have no idea why. This happened about 6 years ago when I was 21. I had just moved to a small town for community college and needed a job, fast. The only place hiring was a gas station right off the highway. It was one of those older places, with 2 gas pumps, a tiny convenience store, and a parking lot that looked way bigger at night than it did during the day. I mostly worked the late shift, from about 10 p.m. until 6 in the morning. At first, I actually liked it. There wasn't much to do, but that was kind of the point. I could listen to podcasts, watch shows on my phone, or read, while waiting for customers. Most nights, I'd maybe see 10 people, total. Truckers, construction workers heading out early, the occasional college kid buying snacks. It was quiet, almost. Too quiet sometimes. One night, in late October, I was working alone like usual. It was around 1:30 in the morning. The highway was dead, and the parking lot was empty, except for one car parked near pump number 2. That car had been sitting there for a while. I noticed it about 20 minutes earlier. It was a dark sedan, with the engine off, and the lights off. At first, I assumed someone had run inside to use the bathroom or something, but nobody had come in. I remember standing behind the counter and looking out through the glass windows, trying to see inside the car, but the windows were tinted enough that I couldn't make out much. Eventually, I just shrugged it off. Sometimes people pulled in to take phone calls, or nap for a few minutes before getting back on the highway. Then, the door chimed. I looked up and saw a man walking in. He looked normal enough at first glance. Maybe mid-30s, medium build, dark hoodie and jeans. Nothing unusual about him. But the first thing I noticed was how slowly he was moving, not in a tired way, more like he was thinking about every step. He didn't look at the shelves or the coolers. He walked straight toward the counter. When he got there, he just stood there for a second, without saying anything. "Can I help you?" I asked. He nodded slightly. Then he asked, "Are you working here alone tonight?" Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten a little. Not aggressive, not threatening, just very deliberate. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just me." He nodded again. Then he looked past me, toward the back hallway that led to the storage room and bathroom. "How late are you here?" "Till 6, I said. Another nod. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a few dollars, and set them on the counter. Pack of Marlboro Reds. I grabbed the cigarettes from behind the counter and slid them over. He picked them up, looked at me one more time, and then walked out. The whole interaction probably lasted less than a minute, but something about it stuck with me. Mostly the questions. It's not that customers never asked things like that. People made small talk all the time. But this didn't feel like small talk. It felt like he was checking something. Still, after a few minutes, I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. About 20 minutes later, a pickup truck pulled into the lot. 2 guys got out. They looked like construction workers, or maybe mechanics, both wearing heavy jackets and boots. They came inside laughing about something and grabbed a bunch of snacks and energy drinks. Totally normal interaction. Paid, left, drove off. For a little while, everything felt normal again. Then, around 2:15 a.m., the door chimed. I looked up. It was the guy in the hoodie again. But this time, something was different. He looked tense. Not nervous exactly, more like he was in a hurry. He walked straight up to the counter again. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied. He glanced toward the windows, then back at me. Then he leaned in slightly. "Have you seen anyone come through here asking questions?" The way he said it immediately made me uneasy. "What kind of questions?" I asked. "About me." That was the first moment I felt real fear. I tried to keep my voice steady. "No," I said. He studied my face for a few seconds, like he was trying to see if I was lying. Then he nodded slowly. "Good." He turned to leave, but right before he reached the door, he stopped. Then he turned back toward me. "If anyone asks," he said, "you didn't see me tonight?" My heart started pounding. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He stared at me one last time, then pushed the door open and disappeared into the night. For a while, nothing happened. I tried to go back to reading on my phone, but I kept glancing at the windows. Every pair of headlights on the highway made me tense up. About 40 minutes later, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Two men got out. They weren't dressed like cops, but something about them immediately gave that vibe. One of them had a jacket with some kind of badge clipped to his belt. They walked inside. "Evening," the taller one said. "Evening," I replied. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was the guy in the hoodie. "Have you seen this man tonight?" For a second, I just froze. That moment felt like it lasted forever, because suddenly, the guy's words were echoing in my head. "If anyone asks, you didn't see me tonight." My brain was racing. If this guy was some kind of criminal, I probably should tell them the truth. But something about the way he said it earlier made me uneasy. Like he might come back, and I was here, alone. I don't think so, I said. The two men exchanged a look. "You sure?" the other one asked. I nodded. "Yeah. Been pretty quiet tonight." The tall one stared at me for a long second. Then he sighed and slipped his phone back into his pocket. "All right," he said. "If you do see him, give us a call." He slid a card across the counter. Then the two of them walked back out to the SUV and drove away. I stood there for a while, staring at the empty parking lot. Part of me felt guilty, part of me felt relieved. But mostly, I just felt unsettled, because something about the whole situation didn't feel finished. And it wasn't. Around 3 a.m., I was in the back room grabbing more coffee cups when I heard the front door open again. My stomach dropped. When I walked back out front, the man in the hoodie was standing by the counter. He looked different now. Not calm, not slow. He looked. I panicked. "You told them?" he asked. My heart jumped into my throat. "What?" "The two guys in the SUV." I shook my head quickly. "No." He stared at me. Then, he slowly exhaled. "Good." For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then, he reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He placed it on the counter. "Hold this for me," he said. I stared at the envelope. "What is it?" "Doesn't matter." He pushed it closer. "If anyone asks, you never got it." Before I could say anything, he turned and walked out the door, just like that. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the envelope. My brain was screaming that this was a terrible idea. Finally, I grabbed it and opened it. Inside was a flash drive, nothing else. No note, no explanation, just the drive. I remember standing there, thinking about all the possibilities: drugs, illegal files, something worse. After about 5 minutes, I made a decision. I took the flash drive, walked to the back office, and unplugged the security computer. Then, I plugged the drive in. What popped up on the screen made my stomach twist. It was a folder filled with photos, dozens of them. Pictures of people, some in parking lots, some outside buildings, some are just walking down the street. Every single one looked like they had been taken, secretly. And at the bottom of the folder was a document with names and addresses. I unplugged the drive immediately. My hands were shaking. I had no idea what I had just stumbled into, but it felt very wrong. About 10 minutes later, the black SUV came back. The two men walked in again. This time, they didn't bother with small talk. "Did he come back?" the tall one asked. I hesitated. Then I slowly reached under the counter and pulled out the envelope. "I think he left this," I said. They looked at each other. The tall one opened the envelope, saw the flash drive, and his expression immediately changed. "Where is he?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. They didn't say anything else. They just grabbed the envelope and rushed back outside. I never saw the man in the hoodie again. The next day, my manager told me some kind of investigation had happened overnight. He didn't know the details, and neither did I. I worked there for about 3 more months before quitting and moving away. And to this day, I still think about that night sometimes, about the man in the hoodie, about the photos on that flash drive, and about the fact that if I had made a slightly different decision, I might have been a lot more involved in whatever that situation really was. Because the truth is, I still don't know if I helped stop something terrible, or if I just betrayed someone who was trying to expose it. I still think about that night. Whenever I pass a gas station after midnight, most people see a quiet little store with bright lights and a coffee machine humming in the corner. I see the place where I realized how quickly a normal night can turn into something you never forget. My name's Kyle, and a few years back, I worked the overnight shift at a gas station just outside a small highway town. It wasn't exactly the kind of place people planned trips to. Mostly truckers, tired drivers, and the occasional local who forgot to buy cigarettes before everything else closed. The job itself? It was ridiculously easy. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., it was usually just me behind the counter. My responsibilities were basically ringing up purchases, restocking shelves if things got slow, and making sure nobody walked out without paying for gas. Most nights were painfully boring. The store sat right off a 2-lane highway, surrounded by fields and patches of woods. After midnight, traffic almost completely disappeared. Sometimes, I'd go 40 minutes without seeing a single car pass by the front windows. Inside the store, there were those old fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly pale. And washed out, they buzzed constantly. A low, electric hum that blended with the humming refrigerators along the back wall. Eventually, you stopped noticing it. The routine was always the same. Around midnight, I'd brew a fresh pot of coffee. Around 1 a.m., I'd mop the floors if they looked dirty. Around 2 a.m., I'd start flipping through whatever magazine or newspaper someone had left behind. Most nights, the only sounds were the refrigerators clicking on and off, and the occasional truck roaring down the highway outside. It was sometime around 2:30 in the morning when the door chime went off. That alone wasn't unusual, but the timing surprised me because the place had been dead quiet for at least an hour. I looked up, expecting to see a truck driver or maybe someone grabbing a drink for the road. Instead, a man walked in who immediately made me sit up a little straighter. He looked like he was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Tall guy, broad shoulders, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Then, he stepped further under the lights. That's when I noticed his hands. They were shaking slightly, like he'd just run a long distance. And there was something dark smeared across his knuckles. My first thought was grease or motor oil. That wasn't exactly uncommon at a gas station. But as he walked past the counter, I caught a better look. It wasn't grease, it was blood. Not a little cut or scrape either. His hands were coated in it, like he'd tried to wash them but hadn't done a very good job. There were faint, reddish stains on the sleeve of his hoodie too. My brain tried to explain it away immediately. Maybe he'd gotten into a fight. Maybe he cut his hand working on his car. Maybe he hit an animal on the highway and tried to move it off the road. People come up with a lot of possibilities when they don't want to assume the worst. The guy didn't look at me right away. He just walked slowly through the aisles, like he was trying to decide what to buy. I tried not to stare, but I definitely kept an eye on him. He grabbed a bottle of water first, then a small bag of chips. Then he stood in front of the refrigerated drinks for way longer than anyone normally would. Something about his body language felt off. He kept glancing toward the front windows, like he was checking to see if someone was outside. At one point, he turned and looked straight at me. His eyes were wide and unfocused, like he hadn't slept in days. I forced a polite nod, the same way you would with any customer. He didn't nod back. He just kept staring for a few seconds before walking up to the counter. Up close, the smell hit me. Metallic, thick. Blood has a very specific smell once you recognize it. I suddenly became very aware that I was alone in the store with this guy. He placed the water and chips on the counter without saying anything. "Find everything okay?" I asked, automatically. That's the line they train you to say at every retail job. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down at his hands, like he was noticing the blood for the first time. Then, he slowly wiped them on the front of his hoodie. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess so." His voice sounded oddly calm. Too calm. I rang up the items, trying to keep things normal. $3.42, I said. He pulled out a handful of crumpled cash and dropped it on the counter. While I counted the bills, I noticed something else, a fresh smear of blood on the edge of the counter where his hand had rested. My stomach tightened. I kept thinking the same question over and over. Where did all that blood come from? He grabbed his change, picked up the water and chips, and turned to leave. Just before he reached the door, he stopped. Then he looked back at me and said something that made my skin crawl. Long nights get boring, huh? I forced a small laugh. Sometimes. He nodded, slowly. Then he walked out. The door chimed behind him, and I watched through the window as he got into an old dark sedan parked near the edge of the lot. For about 10 seconds, I just stood there staring. Then, I grabbed the phone behind the counter. I didn't know exactly what had happened, but something in my gut told me that guy shouldn't have been covered in that much blood. I dialed 911. The dispatcher answered and asked what the emergency was. I started explaining what I'd seen, describing the man and the car. While I was talking, I looked out the window again. The sedan was still sitting there. The engine started. The headlights turned on, but instead of pulling onto the highway, the car turned around in the parking lot and started driving back toward the store. My heart dropped. I realized immediately what must have happened. He probably saw me through the window with the phone. The car stopped right in front of the entrance. The dispatcher was still asking me questions, but I couldn't focus on anything she was saying. The door swung open. The man walked back inside. This time, he wasn't calm. He looked furious. "Who were you calling?" he demanded. I hung up the phone instinctively. "Nobody," I said quickly. He took a few steps closer. "You calling the cops?" "No," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just my boss." He stared at me for a long moment. Then his eyes moved to the phone. Then to the window. Then back to me. I could see the moment he decided he didn't believe me. "You think you're funny?" he snapped. My pulse was pounding in my ears. "I didn't call anybody," I repeated. For a second, I thought he might just yell and leave. Instead, he suddenly slammed both hands on the counter. Crack. The loud noise made me jump. "Don't lie to me." Before I could react, he vaulted over the counter. I mean, literally jumped it. One second he was on the other side. The next, he was grabbing my shirt and pulling me down to the floor. The wind knocked out of me as my back hit the tile. He started punching wildly. I threw my arms up, trying to block my face. The smell of blood was overwhelming now. "Why'd you call them?" he shouted. "I didn't," I gasped. I had never been in a fight like that before. He was stronger than me. Heavier, too. My head hit the floor again, and stars exploded in my vision. Desperate, I remembered something my manager had mentioned once during training. The silent alarm button under the counter. If I could just get to it. But he was on top of me. So instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I shouted the first thing that came to mind. "I have a GUN." The words came out louder than I expected. The reaction was instant. He froze. For a split second, his eyes darted around like he was trying to decide if I was bluffing. Then, he shoved me away and scrambled back over the counter. He didn't even grab the water or chips he'd bought earlier. He just ran straight out the door. The engine of his car roared to life seconds later. By the time I staggered to my feet and looked outside, the sedan was already speeding down the highway. A few minutes later, the police arrived. Apparently, the dispatcher had sent them even though the call disconnected. They took my statement, checked the security cameras, and collected the blood samples left on the floor and counter. I never found out exactly what happened that night. The officers told me they'd look for the car, but I never heard anything else after that. No arrests, no news reports, nothing. For all I know, that man disappeared into the night like it never happened. But sometimes, when I'm driving late and I stop at a gas station, I catch myself watching the door, waiting to see if someone walks in with blood on their hands. I used to think gas stations were the safest places you could stop. During a late-night drive, they're usually well lit, there are cameras everywhere, and most of the time, there's at least one other person around. After what happened to me last winter, though, I don't pull into gas stations after midnight unless I absolutely have to. The weirdest part is that nothing about that night seemed unusual at first. It started like any other long drive home. I work maintenance for a chain of small grocery stores across 3 counties, so I spend a lot of time on the road, fixing freezers, replacing lighting, repairing doors, stuff like that. One night, about 8 months ago, I had been called out to deal with a refrigeration unit that had completely died at a store about 2.5 hours from my house. It was one of those jobs that should have taken maybe 40 minutes, but ended up dragging on forever. By the time I got everything working again, cleaned up my tools, and finished paperwork, it was already a little after midnight. Normally, I don't mind driving at night. Less traffic, quieter roads, But that night, I was exhausted. I'd already worked a full day before getting the call, and the long repair had drained whatever energy I had left. About 40 minutes into the drive home, I realized I was running low on gas. Not dangerously low, but low enough that I didn't want to risk pushing it with another 2 hours left on the highway. I exited at the next small town I saw on the signs. The gas station was one of those older ones right off the highway, with 4 pumps and a tiny convenience store attached. The place was lit up, but the surrounding area was completely dark. There were woods behind the building, and an empty parking lot that stretched around the side. There was one other car at the pump closest to the building when I pulled in, but as I stepped out of my truck, the driver finished up and drove off, without even going inside. After that, it was just me. I didn't think much of it. Late-night gas stations can be empty sometimes. I started filling my tank and leaned against the side of my truck while it pumped. The cold air actually helped wake me up a bit. It was one of those quiet winter nights where every little sound carries. That's why the first thing that caught my attention was the sound of a door closing somewhere behind me. Not the convenience store door. That one had a bell that jingled every time it opened or shut. This was a heavier sound, like a car door. I turned around expecting to see someone pulling into the lot, but the road behind me was empty. I figured maybe someone had pulled into the far side of the parking lot where I couldn't see them yet. Still, I glanced around for a second longer than I normally would. Nothing. The pump clicked off a minute later, and I replaced the nozzle. I debated going inside to grab a coffee or energy drink, but the thought of standing under those bright fluorescent lights while half asleep didn't really appeal to me. So I climbed back into my truck and started the engine. That's when I noticed something odd. In my side mirror, I saw movement near the corner of the building. At first, I thought it was just shadows shifting from the lights, but then a person stepped partially into view. It was a guy wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled up. He wasn't walking toward the pumps or the store. He was just standing there, half hidden behind the wall, watching. I remember thinking it was strange, but not necessarily threatening. Maybe he was smoking or waiting for someone. Still, something about the way he was standing bothered me. He wasn't moving, not pacing, not checking his phone, just standing there and facing my direction. After a few seconds, I told myself I was being paranoid. I had been working all day and my brain was probably just tired. I shifted into reverse and started backing out. As I did, I glanced toward the corner of the building again. The guy was gone. At least, I couldn't see him anymore. I paused for a second, scanning the mirrors, expecting him to walk across the lot or toward the pumps. Nothing. Eventually, I shrugged it off and pulled out onto the road. The highway entrance was less than a minute away, and within another few minutes I was back on the dark stretch of road heading home. For the first 10 minutes, everything felt normal. Then, I heard the first thump. It was faint enough that I almost ignored it. Just a dull sound, somewhere behind me. I assumed it was something sliding around in the truck bed. I keep tools back there. Toolboxes, spare parts, ladders sometimes, so it wouldn't be unusual for something to shift if I took a turn too fast. But a few minutes later, it happened again. Thump. This time, a little louder. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but of course, the bed of my truck was too dark to see anything clearly. I considered pulling over to check, but the highway was empty, and I didn't feel like stopping in the middle of nowhere for what was probably a loose wrench or something. So, I kept driving. Another couple minutes passed. Then, the sound came again. Thump, scrape. That one made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It didn't sound like a tool sliding. It sounded heavier, like something shifting its weight. I turned down the radio and listened. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, another scrape. My brain immediately tried to rationalize it. Maybe one of the toolboxes hadn't latched properly. Maybe a piece of metal was vibrating against the bed liner. I told myself I'd check it when I got home, but right as I was convincing myself of that, I saw something move in the rearview mirror. Just for a split second, a shape rising above the edge of the truck bed. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Then, the shape moved again. A head. Someone's head. Before I could even fully process what I was seeing, a hand suddenly slammed against the rear window of the cab. The sound was so loud it made me jump in my seat. I nearly jerked the steering wheel. When I looked back, there was a man crouched in the truck bed, pounding on the glass with both fists. His hood had fallen back, and I could see his face clearly for a second, in the reflection of my brake lights. His eyes looked wild, completely frantic. He started shouting something, but I couldn't hear the words over the engine and the wind. I swerved instinctively, and the truck drifted halfway into the other lane before I corrected it. My heart was racing so hard I could barely think. All I knew was that there was a stranger in the back of my truck. I slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded slightly as it slowed, tires screeching on the empty highway. The moment I stopped, the pounding stopped too. For half a second, everything was completely silent. Then, the passenger side door of the truck bed dropped open. The man jumped out and immediately started running toward the tree line beside the road. I sat there frozen for a second, trying to understand what had just happened. Then, pure adrenaline kicked in. I threw the truck into park and jumped out. "Hey!" I shouted, without even thinking. The guy was already halfway across the grass. For a moment, I actually started running after him. But then, the reality of the situation hit me. It was pitch black beyond the edge of the road. I had no idea who this guy was, or if he had a weapon. Chasing him into the woods in the middle of the night suddenly felt like the dumbest idea I'd ever had. So I stopped and backed away toward my truck. The man disappeared into the trees within seconds. Just like that, he was gone. I stood there breathing hard, staring into the darkness where he'd vanished. Eventually, I forced myself to check the truck bed. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 2 tries to pull the latch down. When I climbed up and looked inside, the first thing I noticed was that one of my toolboxes had been moved. The lid was open and tools were scattered around. But something else caught my eye immediately. A backpack. It wasn't mine. It was sitting near the front of the bed, tucked against the cab like someone had tried to hide it. For a minute, I just stared at it. Part of me wanted to leave it there and drive away. But curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up carefully and unzipped it. Inside were a bunch of random things. A flashlight, some gloves, a couple empty snack wrappers, and at the bottom, a screwdriver and a small crowbar. That's when the whole situation finally clicked in my head. The guy at the gas station, standing behind the corner of the building, watching me. He must have climbed into the truck bed while I was pumping gas. He probably planned to ride along until I stopped somewhere isolated. Maybe he thought he could rob me. Maybe something worse. I'll never know what his plan actually was. But judging by the tools in that backpack, it definitely wasn't good. I threw the bag into the woods and got back into the truck as fast as I could. The rest of the drive home, I kept checking the mirrors every few seconds. Even though I knew he was gone, I didn't sleep much that night. And to this day, every single time I stop for gas, I check the truck bed before I leave. Every time.